I'm talking to Rufus Marsh, a technician at Varndean College, Brighton. Welcome, Rufus. Rufus, I know you pretty well. I know you make loads of really interesting things, but the thing I want to talk to you today is about an act that you developed. Can you tell me a bit about this?
Yes, well, I was working in France as a juggler, and I included in my act as a juggler, I was using a chair,
Right.
and I would balance it, sometimes at the same time.
Okay.
And I would always balance it on that corner there like that, and then juggle at the same time.
Which is no mean feat in itself.
Well, thank you. But it led me to think that maybe I could spin the chair.
You could, right.
Now, I didn't ever expect to be able to spin it and juggle at the same time. But I very quickly realised that, let's just think of a chair like in a simple form like that, that if I was going to balance it on this corner and spin it around that axis, it was not going to be straightforward because all of the weight is hopelessly poorly
it's not balanced at all.
Poorly distributed.
You've got a sort of double problem, haven't you? You've got the problem balancing it, and you've got this problem of how, once you balance it, to make it spin as well.
Yes, and this shifting weight. So very quickly, I did try chopping up an ordinary chair and adding weight, but that wasn't going to work. And so I got some trunking, electrical trunking, and built a chair out of that.
Okay, yes.
But simply by the way it was joined at the corners, it didn't behave in any way, it just sagged.
It just didn't look like a normal chair either, probably.
No.
Yeah.
So then, in actual fact, this was the next stage, actually.
Right.
This chair here is actually hollow section.
So you basically redesigned a chair initially?
Yes, started from scratch.
Right,
yes.
okay.
I've smashed a few of these, but this one is all hollow section. So each of these sections here are all hollow. In fact, the inside surfaces are balsa wood.
Right.
And so you've got a very, very light chair that you couldn't possibly sit on.
No, but you can modify and play around with.
You can distribute the weight, and in fact, this front corner down there is where I put all the weight. In fact, we have got a photograph, I believe, of the aluminium one I had made, which was a stage before, but where I added lead to the leg, but it wasn't enough at that stage.
See, what I love about your work is that someone who had this idea of wanting to balance a chair and then spinning it, as soon as it didn't work, most people just give up and say, well, it's impossible. Well, what I love about you is that you don't say that. You think to yourself, well, how can I solve this challenge? And that's what happened in the lab. You know, you're doing some experiment and suddenly you reach a dead end. And you can't just stop, you have to find a way. So you've made a chair now, you've tried, the only way of solving it was actually make your own chair, which is hollow, and put weight in it. And then what was next?
So unfortunately I still couldn't do it, even though I could balance the chair and I had a perfectly balanced one around that axis, it still didn't work. Right. So to explain that, I just need to clarify what's happening when you balance something. Okay. We've all balanced at school, we balanced the ruler on our hands, but what's actually happening is I'm looking at the top.
Yes.
Top-heavy objects are easier. But when it starts to tip, I'm, albeit imperceptibly, moving my point of contact to underneath. And then if it tips in a different direction, moving again.
Always moving that bottom bit under the centre of gravity.
Under the centre. And longer objects are easier. Because you get time to react. Essentially, simply put. And so that led me on to what was the solution to solving it. Is that when I'm balancing it, like in our model, because I can't see the top, I'm actually looking at this surface here as my point of reference, and it doesn't behave quite the same, but very quickly you learn how that behaves differently. But when it was spinning, I realised that I couldn't cope with this fluctuating surface as being my point of reference.
Because you're not really looking at the top, you're looking at a changing middle point.
And so the solution to solving it was
wonderfully simple.
Was cutting the hole in it decoratively, but it then meant I could see the top.
And that gives you an enormous amount more control. I mean, I've never balanced anything like this, but presumably suddenly now you're in a situation where you feel more confident.
Certainly. So that meant that it worked. It was very, very fragile, and I had to be incredibly careful when I was doing the show to make sure it's, because you couldn't possibly sit on it. But really the goal was to try and be able to spin an ordinary chair. So I tried a few different bearings, but I eventually ended up what was the again, the solution to using an ordinary chair was a bearing which I happened to have put a cap on this so that for where it touches my forehead, but a bearing that will spin as an ordinary bearing but will also float, so I can find the point of balance, and then essentially within reason I can buy any old second-hand chair, crudely drill down into the opposite corner, push the bearing in, cut the star in the seat, and it will work.
I mean, it sounds simple, but this is always the way. I mean, it's like with physics experiments. You go through all these things, and actually at the end of it, you find a solution which is very simple. And you think, how did I ever not work this out?
But
you need to go.
You
need to go through the process.
Yeah, I needed to go through that process to be able to learn how to do it. Now, as well as all of this, my practicing was increasing as well.
So, because for your confidence, you need to practice more.
You need to be. Obviously, I thought I needed to get as good as I possibly could balancing. So the very first thing I did was to paste a piece of newspaper up on the ceiling and see if I could read the newspaper while I was balancing.
Right.
And it turns out that's quite easy. So then I built this little jig. So as you see, I've got a.
That's the best way of reading the paperback I've ever seen.
So I've got a book there.
Do this on the bus on the way into work. Wow, look at that.
Now,
so how long could you do that for?
Well, the trouble is you have to take the book, you have to take it down to change the page. But I'm proud to say that I read the whole of Muhammad Ali's biography in the balance.
And of course you made it look easy there, but actually it's much easier standing up. It's not easy sitting on a chair.
Yes, indeed, because you've got limited movement. I think we've got a photograph, is that I've built a telly on a stick.
Oh God, look at that.
Now, unfortunately, eventually I smashed that as well.
Oh, no.
But and in fact, while we're on those shots there, I've got a couple of helmets there. That
okay, we go to the helmets, which is the next picture. Yeah, carry on.
Okay, was obviously if you're doing lots of hours balancing, you start having problems with you can't just put a plaster there because you're pressing it in, whatever. So I tried various helmets. These are like the inserts for hard hats.
And they've got a little hand there which allows you to put the
thing. And then
how long do you practice for?
Obviously sometimes several hours a day. There's my, as it were, my best practice one, and it's got a little dimple in there, and it feels very like the real thing.
Now we've got a video of you doing this act, so let's play this and you talk me through it. So,
okay, so this is my act now developed as a waiter, of which as far as I'm aware, nobody else does this.
That's absolutely fantastic, Rufus.
Thank you. And I don't think anybody else has done that. And in fact, it led me on working on the skills to eventually balance 3 objects. There are some people, obviously, who do balance more than one object, but I think it's unique in balancing a chair, table and a broom, one on each hand and one on the head, and including it in a sort of routine with turning and
that's amazing.
And with music.
And I think you've got a clip of that on your website, haven't you? Rufus, Marsh, thank you very much. It's been an inspiration.
Thank you.